You'll build physical resilience and you'll build mental resilience. But the problem is, like you just mentioned, that so many people just get in the routine of being in the routine. They go to the gym, they do the same 5 things, and they leave. They get on the treadmill, they go through 3 machines, they go do some abs, and they walk out. And that's about all they do, right? You don't build any level of physical or mental resilience by doing that. So the mental resilience is built in the gym, literally set to set and rep to rep if you push yourself effectively.
Welcome to the Full Fueled Podcast. Welcome to the Full Fueled Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast.
With your host, Matt Tack.
With your host, Matt Tack.
Your host, Matt Tack.
Who are you?
I'm Dr. Alfred Alessi.
Dr. Alfred Alessi.
Dr. Alfred Alessi.
They know by now, bro. They know by now.
I'm going to set what the new normal looks like in my life.
You're not limited by your genetics.
You have a superpower that is lifting people up. Dude, you look
The
real.
only way we're going to get the word out is with you. Live full fueled, live beyond limits, baby. Let's go.
Welcome to the Full Field Podcast. We got episode number 3 of season 2. And we're super, that's what it is. What's up, man?
What's up?
How you doing?
Good, man.
Your host,
Good.
Matt Tack.
Dr. Alfred Alessi.
And we got Jerry Scarlatto on the call today from the Good Wolf podcast. Jerry focuses on self-improvement and personal development. His podcast explores a range of topics, including mindset, fitness, nutrition, overall well-being. Scarlatto emphasizes the importance of nurturing the good wolf within each person. Concept derived from the famous native parable about 2 wolves that represent opposing forces within us. Welcome to the podcast, Jerry.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate you guys. I appreciate that intro, man. That was well done. But yeah, man, great to be on. Matt, you and I got a chance to talk on my show just the other day. So, hopefully you guys, your audience will be able to jump over and listen to that as well, because we had a great conversation. But looking forward to seeing what we can make happen today.
Yeah, man. Tell us a little bit about the Good Wolf. We were talking about it before the podcast, but how that derived, how that speaks to you, and how you came up with the concept.
So it was an accident to begin with. I'll go back to the beginning of the story and let it play out. So I had a fitness studio for 10 years, and when I first started it, we just kind of got it started. It was called Thrive Fitness. I had about 25 members. And one day, one of my members was like, he was joking around and he was like, "Oh yeah, the pack, we're part of the pack and we get to, we enjoy each other. We come in here, we work out hard." And I'm like, "Oh, what'd you just say?" He's like, "Oh, the pack." I was like, "Oh, I kind of like that." So we got this sign made and we put it up on the wall and it said "Run with the pack." And we officially got a wolf as our mascot. So it slowly like built into this thing. And then suddenly we had wolves all over the place. And last year, when I went to start the podcast, I thought about what would be a good name for the podcast, and I heard the parable before, which I can run through the parable. But I'd heard the parable before, and I'm like, that's kind of what we do here, because Thryvology, which ended up being the name of the studio, I think I changed the name like 5 times, but that's another story for another day. We ended up calling it Thryvology because we moved locations and I wanted to trademark the name, and Thrive Fitness was already trademarked. So we changed the name to Thryvology. And if you asked any of our members what we did, it wasn't just like, "Hey, we worked out here." It wasn't just, "Hey, we came here and trained." Most of them would tell you that we tried to promote a full holistic lifestyle. We tried to promote the best version of yourself, and we did that in many different ways. We offered nutrition coaching. Of course, we had training there, but then we would also do community events. We would also do workshops that promoted personal growth. We would also do goal setting workshops. And at the first of the year, we would do different workshops and so forth. So they would all tell you that we promoted more than that. So I'm like, "Oh, Good Wolf sounds great. Good Wolf something." So whenever I first started it, it was Good Wolf Radio. And then last year I closed the business down. And as I closed it down, I knew I wanted to take this brand and move it forward, but radio kind of sounded very general. So I wanted to make it more deliberate. So then I changed radio to project, because we are all an ongoing project. We are all constantly trying to build the best version of ourselves. So for those of you who don't know the parable, sorry, I'm like completely taking up this podcast right now, but for those of you
Keep going.
who don't know the parable, The parable is an old Cherokee legend. A Cherokee chief and his grandson are sitting around a fire, and they're sitting there chatting, and the Cherokee chief is telling his son, hey, we all have two wolves inside of us. A bad wolf that's full of hate and greed and envy, and a good wolf that's filled with joy and happiness and love and care. And they chat back and forth a little longer, and the grandson looks at the chief and he goes, well, Grandpa, if we all have two good wolves inside of us, which one wins? And the chief says, the one you feed. So that's where the name, the good wolf, comes from. It's just the idea that you're constantly feeding your best version of yourself. You're constantly having to work on yourself. As we all know, when we let that slip, when we kind of let our ideal of our best self go to the wayside, we very easily slip backwards. So it's just a constant progression.
Yeah. And that's exactly the whole, like, the one you feed thing, right? Is like, we all have these things inside of us, and you can choose to focus on the good stuff. You can choose to focus on the negative, and those things will grow the more you focus on them. We were just talking about that this morning with, having a negative mindset or a negative attitude. As soon as you shift into gratitude, you can't focus on both at the same time. It's impossible. So when you're focusing on gratitude, you're literally starving that negativity and that, that hate or whatever it might be. You're starving that out because you're feeding the other one. So I love that parable, man. I've definitely thought about that a lot. And that's something that, we basically put into practice daily.
Feeding the good wolf.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And Matt and I talked about this during our episode, how Matt went through his own transition in his 20s, going from a negative mindset to a positive mindset and starting to make that shift as he was growing himself. And I told my own story and kind of doing the same thing. Mine was a little more dramatic, if you will, or a little more instant. His was a little more progressive. But, I went through a depressive state in my early 20s as well, because I played college football. And, being an athlete all the way up through my early 20s, once football was over, athletics was done, and I felt like a part of me was done, right? I felt like my identity had kind of shifted, and I didn't really know at the time where that was shifting. And I didn't have the mental resilience to kind of start to work through things. So I went into this funk. I went into this depression. I started to put on weight. At the time, I told myself it was deliberate, which it kind of was, because I've been in the weight room and I've always enjoyed lifting heavy. And at the time, I was trying to put on some size, but turns out I put on a little more than I intended to. So there was one day where I got on the scale, and this is after maybe 9 months of just like secluding myself from people, having like my mindset was not in a good place. I knew that I was not mentally strong. So I get on the scale, and I probably hadn't been on the scale in 9 months because I was just like, hey, I'm putting on weight. Why do I need to weigh myself?
Okay. Yeah.
Jumped on the scale and I'm like 240, and I'm like, oh, I remember sitting next to somebody, one of our members, and I went and I sat back down, and she looked at me and she goes, well, how was it? And I was like, not good. Not good. And it was like that instant, I was like, damn, I got to change something. So I totally understand, Matt and I kind of have that connection where, you go through those ebbs and flows of life, and hopefully you become more resilient. We all have those times where we get knocked down, but I think the goal is to make your lows higher and your highs higher. You're always going to have those lows, but you kind of want to notch yourself up a little higher every time you get knocked down, if you will. So it is a constant work in progress for sure.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit more, because I think that's such a good concept, and something that I've catered to a little bit more about this concept of being called the forever athlete, right? Is that we never truly lose that, right? But there's this shift when you're no longer competing or performing in an athletic endeavor where you're like out it to win. But like there's this concept that I have that, I'm not going to call myself a former athlete. I'm a forever athlete, and how I'm competing every day. What are some of the things that you do? I know that you're in phenomenal shape now since that moment. But what are some of the daily disciplines that you do as a forever athlete today that keep you at peak performance?
Yeah, and I love that concept also. I believe that every human being is meant to run and jump and lift weights and be strong and have lean mass and and be lean. I believe that all human beings are meant to and have the capability to do that. Now, of course, we're convinced through society that that's not the case. So we have to work against that, which is super challenging for sure. But, I believe it comes down to deciding what you have to know what season you're in, what season of kind of your life that you're in. And you kind of go, what does success look like for me in my training for this season? And the season can be for the next couple of years. It can be for the next 3 months. And that part's up to you. Now, of course, I have regular weight training that I do 5 days a week. And then I also make sure that I do regular plyometrics 2 or 3 days a week. And then I have walking that I do every single day because I have standards that I meet for myself. Those are just a couple of the basic standards. But then, of course, I have things that I'm training for also. So, for instance, I just did a Tough Mudder 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. So there was a 10 to 12 week period of time where I was training for that. I don't have the next thing set, which I need to get set. Otherwise, I'll start to lose my focus. But whatever the next thing is, I'll plan something 12 to 15 weeks down the road, and then I'll start training for that. So I think having also that thing, and it can be a Tough Mudder, it can be a marathon, it can be your own made up, if you have like a day where you're like, hey, this day I'm going to test my bench squat and deadlift. So you can have your own thing that you kind of train for, or you can get some buddies together and you're like, hey, I want to go out and I want to do something on a certain day, and I want us to be able to train for that thing. I think that's important as well. So you have this combination of your own standards that you do every day. Like I said, mine are training 5 days a week in the weight room. I walk every day, whether that's hiking or just a regular walk, at least 2 miles. And then I do agility work at least 2 or 3 days a week as well. And then on the other end of that, to keep things fresh, if you will, is having something to train for. Because, of course, we're human beings. We get bored with things, right? So you got to keep things fresh by having that thing out there that you're like, oh, that's what I got to get ready for.
Yeah, I love that. I think most guys that we do like take through our coaching programs, and guys just that we talk to in general, is just like, yeah, I just go to the gym and like I do my thing. And it's like you lose focus because you've done the same thing for so long. I used to do that, right? Like I was like more like bodybuilding type of exercise, and it just got so boring to me. I was like, I need to do something different. And so then I went through like a few months of like HIIT training, and then the last few months I've been training more athletic again. I got back into playing lacrosse. And so it's like having like keeping that like periodization almost, right? Every couple months, change it up, do something different, set new goals. And I think most people just don't set goals, honestly. I don't think they have something to aim for, like a finish line, that kind of like phases into like the question I wanted to ask you. Obviously your podcast and our podcast has a lot of mindset and focusing on that, but it ties into the physical side as well. So, what is the relationship between the physical and the mindset that, is so important, and why is that so important?
Having worked with thousands of people over the course of owning that training studio, I was also a strength conditioning coach for a high school in the area for 2 or 3 years, and throughout that time, I was also strength conditioning coach for individual sports as well. A couple of swim teams, a couple of basketball teams, a couple of soccer teams. So, having trained, anywhere from like an 8-year-old peewee kid athlete to like a 90-year-old, I think our oldest member at the gym was maybe, I'll say 85, and everywhere in between. Mindset is the most important thing. And that's what health and fitness misses. If you look at why most people quit, it is not because the exercise didn't work. It's not because the diet didn't work. It's because they didn't have the mental resilience to keep going. It's because you didn't start to change who you think you are and what you think you're capable of. And until you start to make that shift at the same time, then it's going to be challenging for you to overcome those barriers when they show up. Once you actually stop losing weight, once progress stops happening, once things slow down, or when things get hard and your schedule changes, if you don't believe that you're the kind of person that exercises and maintains your health and has a level of resilience, then you're just going to quit. That's just going to go by the wayside. So that mindset part is equally as important, if not more important, because it plays out in so many different ways. Now, I believe that physical training is the best way to build your mindset, because if you do it correctly, then you will do both. You'll build physical resilience and you'll build mental resilience. But the problem is, like you just mentioned, that so many people just get in the routine of being in the routine. They go to the gym, they do the same 5 things, and they leave. They get on the treadmill, they go through 3 machines, they go do some abs, and they walk out. And that's about all they do, right? You don't build any level of physical or mental resilience by doing that. So the mental resilience is built in the gym, literally set to set and rep to rep if you push yourself effectively. So you just, if you understand that who you are today can't achieve the goals that you want to achieve tomorrow, then you can understand why that mindset development is so important and why pushing yourself within every session at some form, at some level is so important as well, because it allows you to do both, be physically strong and mentally strong.
And it's that concept of positive muscle failure that most people will never even get to, right? They don't push themselves hard enough. Corey Van Doren was on our show. We talked to him a lot about it. And it's like, he's like, man, I'll be training someone and they'll be at like 12 reps and they're like, oh, and they're about to drop the weights. And he's like, no, 2 more. They do 2 more. He's like, no, 2 more. They do 2 more. Then they've done like 6 more. He's like, you were about to drop the weights when you had 6 more in you. We tap out mentally long before we tap out physically. And so we're never really like hitting that threshold that is required for that growth. If we're talking building muscle and hypertrophy. And so, that's something that I've really, really been focused on lately. And, so it does look like, obviously volume wise, like maybe doing less sets, but making sure each set is done to that positive failure where I'm stimulating growth and change. So
I would say even more so about that. I'm gonna give myself a little kudos right now too. So the one thing you said in that was like there was another guy there with you, that pushed you into that sixth rep, and so this guy started playing lacrosse, right? And a couple weeks ago, friggin' just bottomed out his hamstring, like ripped up his hamstring. And so what does this guy do? Forget everything he's ever been taught. Like forgot everything he's ever been taught, right?
And everything he teaches everybody else too.
He teaches everybody else.
Seriously.
So I'm like, dude, let's come up with a game plan. Yeah. And so I just told him, I was like, it's the same way. Like this is the kind of the concept of the forever athlete is that injuries will come along. You stop losing weight, this will come along. Like you're building like strength and all this stuff. You will stagnate at some point, and you gotta figure things out. And so, and I'm sure I would be the same way if I get injured. I'm not injured right now, but this guy forgets everything. And I'm like, all right, let's come up with a game plan. He gets in the cold plunge. We order some BPC 157 for him. We're like, he's getting his soft wave therapy, and he was consistent with the process, where a 6-week injury turned into really about a 2.5 week where he's getting in repetitions now again in the gym. And so I give kudos to myself.
Yeah. And what it was, looking back on it, what it was pure frustration that just clouded. Like if we're talking mindset, it clouded everything I knew. It was like, I couldn't see anything but about how pissed I was that I just pulled my hamstring when I'd been training for the last 2 months to get back into playing lacrosse. 2 games into the season, I freaking pulled my hamstring. I was just so annoyed that yeah, you're right. It was just like everything was like pushed away. And so having the accountability was awesome. Like that's, why we need that group and those figures around us for sure.
100%. There's a saying that a doctor is his own worst patient. And I've seen that through with myself as well. Again, training people, I tell them, make sure that you progress correctly. Make sure you don't go up too quickly. Well, 18 months ago, I decided that I want to start lifting heavy again. And of course, my mind, and this is a person who literally tells people every single day of their life, you're not who you used to be. You can't go back and immediately jump into the weights that you used to do. Not that I immediately tried to do those weights because I know where that bar is, but let's just say that I moved a little faster than I needed to, and my body got real pissed real quick. So I totally get it. Yeah. And I started getting chronic overuse injuries instead of acute injuries, which can almost be more debilitating than, those acute injuries could be. So again, I get it. And anybody listening to this, again, you're listening to humans be humans. We are people who literally tell people every day, hey, this is what you need to do. You need to be smart about things. You need to be. And yet I'm an idiot and I go and do the complete opposite of what I tell people to do. So luckily I figured that out a little more over the last 6 to 9 months, and I'm progressing more effectively, but I had to take a step back to take 5 steps forward, and that's human nature. So to go back to your point though of the progression, which this is super important, because this is where so many people give up because they don't make progress because they don't push themselves. So there's this idea in weightlifting called rate of perceived exertion, or rate of perceived effort, whatever you want to call it. It's generally a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being it's super easy, 10 being it's super hard and I couldn't do one more rep. So what most people do, and again, this is through having trained thousands of people and watching many people, stop whenever they can do more. Most people get to about a 7 and they stop, and they don't go past that 7 ever. They stop at that 7. So for instance, if you're doing squats with like a 25-pound goblet squats with a 25-pound kettlebell, and you do 10 squats and your RPE, meaning how hard it is for you, is a 7 once you get to 10. If you always stop at 10, it will always be a 7. It will always be the same. If you never go to that 11th rep, then that 10 will always feel the same. So the goal is to push to the 11th and 12th rep so that 10 then becomes a 6 or a 5. It literally starts to feel easier. But most people in their mind tell themselves that 10 was hard enough, that 10 was challenging enough. So literally finding the mental fortitude to push for 2 more reps. In the example you gave, 6 more reps, which I believe that most people can get at least 6 more reps of almost anything that they're attempting, unless you're a power lifter, of course. But any average human being can get at least 6 more reps of what they're attempting. And if you just push yourself to 2 or 3 more, then your previous weight that you're using will be easier, and you will have become more physically and mentally resilient at the same time.
What do you think about this? And this is something that I do sometimes, is I just don't count. Like, I try my hardest to like not even count. Like, I know realistically how many reps I can get with a certain amount of weight, and if it feels light, I'll increase the weight, or I'll slow down right on the eccentric. But sometimes I'm like, just stop counting and go till you freaking can't. Like, go till it kind of starts to till your form goes or whatever, right? And I almost feel like that sometimes is, if I were to be counting, I'd be further along than what I probably would have tapped at, right?
100% for sure,
Yeah.
because you set that expectation in your mind. When you set the expectation, and I see this with myself and with people regularly, when you set the expectation, okay, I'm going to get 10 reps, then you get 10 and it feels hard at 10. But if you don't set the expectation, if you're just like, okay, I'm going to see how many I can get, then it might be 16, might be 18. It could potentially be 20. So that's actually a brilliant idea. I like that a lot. I'll tell you another one that I like a lot that we did kind of by accident last year, my lifting partner and myself. We got this, we had this big die at the gym that we used during classes sometimes. It was the way we use it in classes. We would have an exercise assigned to a number, and we would roll the die, and you would have to do that exercise, and then I forget how we would pick the number of reps for the exercise. Anyway, the way that we used it is we knew what exercises we wanted to do, but instead we would roll the die, and that would define how many reps we would do. Sometimes we would do ×1. So if we rolled a 2, then it would just be a 2. But sometimes we would do ×2 or ×3. So if we rolled a 2, it would be either 4 or 6, depending on if we were multiplying it that day. And what I found was there were days where I could do the same weight for twice as many reps as I did the week before. For instance, if the week before I did 225 for a set of 6 on bench, the following week I did 225 for a set of 12 on bench, but it's only because in my mind I had never set the expectation beforehand. In other words, for most of my training sessions, I'll write out what I'm going to do. So I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to do 3 sets of 10 here. I know I'm going to do 3 sets of 8 here, and so on and so forth. And then I can play it in my mind. But when I'm rolling the die, I don't know what I need to pick until the die's cast, until it lands on a number. And then I'm like, okay, well, I got to do 6. I have no freaking clue, because that last set I just did 12 and it felt easy. So then I just throw a weight on. So literally you don't give your mind the opportunity to even catch up to the reps. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It gamifies it.
It does. I love gamifying. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's kind of fun.
We all do.
Yeah.
One thing that I've recently started doing is, I always do time under tension, but I have been doing a lot of drop sets. that then just take things to absolute fatigue. So I'll drop it by 10, but usually my last set of whatever I'm doing, it's a drop set of like 4. And so you're just going to failure on like, as you drop it 10 pounds. Another thing that I've seen, just in the nature of how people work out, and we talked about in our podcast, the idea of like heart rate variability and getting that exposure, even when you're in a resistance training scenario. And Alfie and I do this all the time, but doing where we're just jumping, we're almost doing a full body circuit at many times throughout it, and just jumping from, whatever machine that we're on. Right. And I've seen just getting that type of routine doesn't allow you to grab a phone. I see so many people sitting down, they're on bench, but they're on bench for 20 minutes. And I'm like, you're still on bench? I just got done with a complete workout and you're still on bench. So really systematizing it where I'm like hitting out body parts, but I'm getting my HRV and it's fluctuating through the entire time.
It does 3 things. The one thing is it's time efficient, right? We're both busy entrepreneurs running multiple businesses. I have an hour, probably tops, to work out during the day. Like that's all I got. And it's around lunchtime. So I have to do as much as I can in that hour. So when you're supersetting and you're circuit training, it's just more efficient. 2, it's going to allow you to get that peripheral heart action where you're pushing from the legs up to the heart. The heart has to work harder. And yes, it's like that lower rest is going to be more fat burning, right? So you're building muscle, burning fat at the same time. So in my opinion, like doing circuits, even if it is just like supersets, is the most, I don't know, I think it's the best way to train, just, at least in what we do. But
I've certainly found, at the gym at Thryvology, that was the way we programmed, was not essentially, it was full body circuit training, whatever you want to define it as, but there was always an upper body and lower body workout or exercise together in one group. In another group, it was 3 or 4 exercises, an upper body, a lower body, some sort of core movement, and generally a carry or some form of ab or core kind of exercise. So again, I completely agree. Most people fall into the belief, you walk into the gym and you kind of look at what everyone else does, and everyone else is doing arms and back and chest. And they, like you said, they do an exercise, and now, and this pisses me off to no end. Now, like you said, they sit on their phone. They do an exercise and then just look down and get on their phone, and then put their phone down, put their head up, do the exercise, put their head down, get on their phone. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, my mind cannot even grasp how you think that that's training, how you think that that's getting better. Now, granted, what you're doing is better than sitting at home and doing nothing. So I will give you that much, and I cannot take that away from anybody. And yet, if your expectations are that you want to train and be better, and you think that that is training and getting better, then your effort and your expectations are on 2 different levels. You just have to be able to do more. And so many people believe that they don't have time to get in the gym because they think it needs to look like that. And you can't get a whole lot done when it looks like that. But you can get a whole lot done when you're training the way that you guys are talking about. Going from a push exercise to a pull exercise, or from a push exercise to a squat exercise, back and forth like that. Not only do you get the time efficiency of it, but you guys have already covered, so I don't need to completely regurgitate what you said, but it's 100% true. Don't just do what everyone else is doing, or don't just do what you've normally done, or don't just do because in 1975, when Arnold came over from Australia, he's the one that started training back and buys and so on and so forth. So now everyone else does that. Like, literally, that's where all of that started. And so it's literally has just grown since then. And everyone thinks that that's the way that you train in the weight room. But it's not even the most effective way to grow muscle. So you have to be able to see what is useful for you and then put that into play so that you can actually get something out of the workout that you're doing.
Well, it's also like unrealistic expectations. Like the pro, the bodybuilding pros are, 1, genetic freaks, and 2, on all kinds of stuff, right? And so like, even no amount of steroids, my genetics, I'm never going to be like that, right? Like I'll build a ton of muscle, but my frame is just longer. It's more athletic, right? So like, I'll never be that stocky, like bull-shaped dude like Arnold was, right? That's just his genetics. And so I think you have to kind of understand that. But also,
Steroids do a lot, though.
Steroids do a lot. They're a hell of a drug. But I think Chris Cavallini would have a field day with this, because most people are not going to the gym with the mindset that we all do, right? Like I want to like optimize myself, or I want to get as best results as I can. They're going because they're like, I know it's good for me. I got to go to the gym.
Box checkers.
Yeah, they're checking boxes, man. They're like, I, the doctor said I should work out 3 days a week, so here I am, right? But like, it's not necessarily because they are trying to enhance their life, right? They just know it's something that they got to do, right? Which again is better than nothing, but like that's just that mentality of like being average. And that's, I don't know, I think that's kind of weak.
I was working out. You talk about like body frames too. Like I think my, as far as what my frame can probably hold organically, and it's probably, honestly, we have very similar body types, but probably in the 210 to 215 range is what I likely can max out at and feel really good, really solid cardiovascular shape and have a solid muscular structure. But I was working out with my buddy, so he played for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I talk about box checkers. So he has like a little core group of guys that we meet up with when I go back to Michigan. And so I was working out with him, and he has hyper-focused workouts now too. He works. So we get in the gym, and there's a guy that we see that came in, and he's like, hey guys, he's like, he's wanting in the pack, right? But you can't get in the pack
you get
just
eaten,
to get
boy.
in the pack. And so anyways, he comes in, and we're ripping through our workout. So it's a lot of supersets with him. So we're just supersetting everything, and then we're going over to the next machine. And I'm watching him, and I'm like, I actually said something to my wife about it. I'm like, dude, that is such like a box checker mentality, because he came in for 20 minutes. And he's a big guy now. I actually went to college with him, so hopefully he's not listening to this. But he comes in, and he does triceps, hangs out on his phone for a little bit, tricep pull downs, and then did a few other things. And then next thing we know, we're in the middle of our workout. He's like, see you guys on Wednesday. It's like, what? Like, you were here for 20 minutes. Like, what did you possibly do? So that is like that box checker mentality is, a lot of people just don't come in with the proper planning. That's what I love about like what you were doing at Thryvology, and building the community and the pack around it is like, when they're stepping into it, they're stepping in, hey, with the mindset of maybe waking up in the morning, and I'm doing an afternoon class. And those are my people that aren't counting on me, but they're counting on me at the same time. So I love the idea of just the good wolf and the pack mentality that you created there, and you're continually creating. But talk to us a little bit about the Good Wolf Academy, what you have in kind of future and in store for that, as well as the podcast.
Yeah. So like I said, with the, well, let me back up, because it's going to be stuck in the back of my mind. And unless I get it out, it's just going to kind of sit there. But no, I completely agree. I think what you need to ask yourself is, what do you want to get out of your time in the gym? And that's the most important question. And if your answer is, hey, I just want to go and check boxes, then cool, great. Like, by no means am I going to judge you, because again, it's better than sitting at home and doing nothing. 100%. That's always going to be the answer. But if your answer is, I'm hoping to get some results out of it, then you need to go in with different expectations of your effort, and you need to constantly be checking your effort. So I think it's just important to ask yourself constantly, is my effort matching the expectations that I have of my efforts in the gym, of what I want to get out of the gym? And that's just, I think, a very important question to constantly ask yourself. So, but to go back to your question, I knew that once I got out of Thryvology, once that was out of the way, I don't mean out of the way in a thank goodness way, but once I moved on and stayed with the podcast and everything, I know that I want to build off of the podcast. So my goal is continuously build the brand, and off of the brand is a personal development, e-learning platform and coaching platform, Good Wolf Academy, that helps people in many different layers, if you will. Right now, it's just me literally individualized coaching with people, individualized packages that help them build their mental resilience and their physical resilience together. But it'll expand out into other things that I'm currently building a project that I'll be launching hopefully in 2 weeks by the end of the month, which I'm super excited about. It's just a basic productivity project, which sounds basic, but most people have trouble with their time. That's the number one excuse that most people have is, oh, I don't have the time with things. So if you can literally figure out where to find time, and everyone can do it, no matter if you have 7 kids, which one of our members at the gym literally had 7 children, and she would come to the gym 3 days a week. Their kids were all homeschooled as well. So if she can homeschool 7 kids and she can come to the gym 3 days a week, I don't think that many of us can have an excuse, even us entrepreneurs. I don't have any kids, but again, I looked at her and I'm like, girl, I want to bow at your feet every time you walk in the door. But at any rate, productivity is just one thing a lot of us could get much better at. So I'm building something for that to help people get out of their own way so that they can start to implement the things in their life that they want. So, I have this vision of just a couple of different brands built off of the podcast, and I know it's going to take time. So patience is something that I have been building in myself over these last 6 to 9 months as that progresses. But right now, it's just trying to get as many eyes on eyes and ears on the content as possible, and that's where it's at, brother.
That's awesome, man. I would love to absorb some of that info too on that productivity thing you're working on. So keep me posted on that, because that's, man, I like ADHD is like the one thing that I have to use as a power versus like let it like hold me back. But it's like I got to be time regimented all day long, or else like I'm doing nothing. Like my brain is like chasing butterflies, So I love that, man, and I think a lot of people will benefit from that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely something that, like I said, considering we have literally thousands of things thrown at us throughout the day, we have so many opportunities to pay attention to other things. And our attention is being literally pulled in 1,000 different directions at any moment. Right. We have to say no to 1,000,000 things in one moment at a time. We can only do one thing at a time. So we literally have to teach ourselves to say no to things. And it starts by, I think we talked about this as well, taking off the brakes. And that means letting go of some things and just saying, hey, these are just things that I'm just either never going to pay attention to, or for now, I'm not going to pay attention to, so that I can focus on the things that I say are important to me.
I think saying no is huge. We've talked about that all the time. It's like I used to overcommit, just want to please everybody, do all these things, say yes, yes, yes. And that's not healthy, man. You end up overcommitting to too many things. So saying no is a superpower. And then just being dialed in on the main things, right? Like what are the top 3 to 5 like tasks, right, that you got to knock out. So yeah,
I actually mentioned something on my Facebook feed the other day of a question you asked me. And then, what do I say no to? And I had mentioned that I say no to alcohol now. And it's just not something that I have in my repertoire. You should have seen the comments underneath that. We're just like, me too. No, one guy's like, I gave up cocaine in 1990. People never do cocaine. So
that's probably good.
Some funny ones too. But as we wrap this up, I always want to leave our listeners with something to think about. Obviously, you were focusing on the mindset piece, the physicality piece as well. But, what advice would you give someone who is just starting their personal development journey and maybe feels a little bit overwhelmed right now?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Here's what I'll say. Anytime you see a norm in society, question it. When you see people that are unhealthy and you're like, oh, well, everyone's unhealthy, question it. Is it normal to be unhealthy, or is it just that it is the norm in society? When people tell you that doing and running your own business is hard and risky, and there's a high likelihood that you'll fail, and you look around and everyone else is unhappy and unfulfilled, and they're all living, working at a corporate job, working in a place where they complain about their work all day long, you go, well, is that normal? Is that something that I have to do? So I would say it's literally just starting to question things, starting to question not only what other people are saying and doing, but also some of the things that you believe, because we all have beliefs built into us, sometimes by our, other people around us, actually always by other people around us, but mostly it comes from our parents. And even though our parents love us and care about us and they want what's best for us, it doesn't mean that they have done things in the best in the most effective way possible. So you have to question also the beliefs that they built into you about how the world works and what you're capable of. So I think it just starts with that, questioning your thoughts and questioning what people, the outcomes of other people's lives.
That's gold. That is gold.
Yeah, that is so good. I was listening to something on Ed Milet just recently. He had mentioned something about this, and that we do have to really understand and look at a level, sometimes a level of curiosity. I had to look at it from my parents' standpoint of like, what does success look like, right? And so as I perceive the world around me, when a parent says you can be whatever you want to be, because we tell that to our kids, right? You can be whatever you want to be, right? You are the world's greatest. And then, but mom, dad, like are you happy? Are you doing what you want to be? And in the definition of the world of success, I had to look back. I reflected this morning on the way over here to this podcast of like, my parents did a pretty darn good job, because I honestly could say that like my dad lived out his dream. Yeah, he was a school teacher. They didn't make a ton of money. We were a very middle class family. My mom was like a Christian school education teacher. She was a reading specialist. She taught kids how to read. That completely changed their life. And my dad was a high school teacher that like was a basketball coach for 40 years. That's what he absolutely loved and like what made him happy. And I was like, there's different versions of success, right? We want to always put like a dollar amount on it. We were a middle-class family, but if I had to look back, I'm like, man, yeah, my parents were happy and they were doing what they actually wanted to do. And it just like in the perception of the world, it was like, man, they didn't get to that pinnacle of success per se. But I was like, thank you, God. Like, I was like, thank you for putting those parents in my life that actually showed success and did what they wanted to do, right? For, 30 and 40 years of school teaching and basketball coaching. So that was something that I had to reflect on. I know everyone doesn't get that, but sometimes you got to, contrast that of, hey, look, exactly what you're saying. Like, mom, dad, are you truly, I got to figure this out myself.
Most definitely. And I love that. That's a great example, by the way, because I mean, every definition of success is different. And I think, again, we take on other people's definitions of success for good and for bad. For good, because, we look at a number amount and we're like, while a number amount can be useful because you can do more things with more money, which is definitely true. And to an extent, it can make you more fulfilled to an extent if you use it correctly. But do you have to do that? Well, no, of course not. If teaching is what you're passionate about, then be a great teacher. If helping kids read is what you're passionate about, then help kids read to the best of your ability. And by all means, that will bring you fulfillment. That will bring you happiness. The point is just to question, just to ask, what is it? What is the thing that makes me happy? And what does success look like to me?
Love that. And kind of going back to what you had said about the whole like normal thing, right? It's like, I tell patients this all the time, and they're like, oh, I think I'm just getting old. It's normal to have this joint pain, or, oh, you're going to get fat. It's normal. It's like, no, it's not normal. It's common. It's very common, but that doesn't mean it's normal physiologically, right? That is not how humans should age. So just to leave everybody with that. I'm going to ask you one more question, man, that we ask all our guests. Our podcast is called Full Fueled. We talk about living a full fueled life. What does that look like to you, man?
I think it is being your best physically while reaching a level of fulfillment that most people aren't able to reach in their life. How do you build your best from a physical standpoint, which I believe is the foundation of the rest of it? If you build your foundation, if you build your physical foundation, then you can then take that and transfer that into other areas of your life. Because like we talked about at the beginning of this, physical is the best way to build mental resilience. It's the best way to build mental belief in yourself, self-confidence, self-belief, self-respect, and all of those things, which then transfers into all areas of your life. So build that foundation and then let that dissipate out into all the other areas of your life. And there's a very damn good chance that you'll find that level of fulfillment that you're looking for.
Amen. Beautiful.
That was beautiful. Well, Jerry, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man. It's been a real pleasure.
Real quick, tell our listeners where they can learn more about you, Instagram, website, your projects, all that stuff, man.
Yeah, for sure. So Instagram is at Jerry Scarlatto, as are all the other platforms, whatever that looks like to you. And then the website for the podcast is goodwolfproject.us. You can find the episodes all there. You can also put that into any podcast, engine and find it there as well. But I got a couple extra things on the website for you to download if you want to go there, put your email in, and get some free stuff, which is always fun.
Awesome. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes.
Yes, sir.
People, Jerry Scarlatto. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate you guys.
Welcome to the Full Field Podcast.
I'm going to set what the new normal looks like in my life.
You're not limited by your genetics.
You have our superpower that is lifting people up.
So unfortunately, most businesses aren't going to use the highest quality ingredients.
What's your
Dude's
approach?
jacked.
I know he's jacked. That's why I'm asking him.
I don't think he lifts.
It's consistency in everything that we do that really compounds. Only way we're going to get the word out is with you. Live full fueled, live beyond limits, baby.